What if I told you the very thing that's been holding you back? The reason you can't seem to move on, no matter how much time has passed, isn't the pain itself, but your refusal to face it. Think about that for a moment. We tell ourselves, I'll be fine once this person apologizes. I'll be fine when life gives me back what it took away. I'll be fine if I just keep myself busy enough not to think about it. But deep down, you know that's a lie. You can't outrun it. You can't bury it. You can't scroll it away. And the longer you resist it, the tighter its grip becomes. Here's the truth most people don't want to hear. You will never heal until you accept what happened. Not when it feels fair. Not when people do right by you. Not when the world suddenly becomes kind. Healing doesn't wait for perfect conditions. Healing begins the moment you stop saying, this shouldn't have happened, and start saying it did. And now I decide what happens next. Let me ask you something. How much longer are you willing to carry a story that no longer serves you? How much more of your future are you willing to sacrifice to a past you cannot change? Because until you accept the truth fully, unapologetically, you will stay chained to it. But once you do, once you stare it in the face and own it, that's when everything changes. Acceptance is one of the hardest things you will ever do in your life, and that is exactly why it is also the most liberating. When something painful happens to you, betrayal, loss, rejection, failure, the natural reaction is to resist it. You replay it in your mind. You argue with it in your thoughts. You build a case against why it should never have happened. You tell yourself, this isn't fair. This isn't right. I didn't deserve this. And maybe you're right. Maybe you truly didn't deserve it. But whether you deserved it or not doesn't change the fact that it did happen. That's where most people get stuck, in that gap between what they think should have been and what actually is. And in that gap, life stalls. You can't heal from what you refuse to face. You can't rewrite the story if you won't even admit what's on the page. Acceptance isn't about saying, I'm okay with it. It's not about giving approval to the pain, to the injustice, or to the cruelty of what happened. Acceptance is about acknowledging reality for what it is, without sugarcoating, without denial, without excuses. It's looking at the wound directly and saying, this is real. This is part of my story. And now I have to deal with it. Most people misunderstand acceptance. They think accepting means agreeing. They think it means letting the other person off the hook, or letting life walk all over them. But that's not it at all. Acceptance doesn't mean approval. It means awareness. When you accept something, you're no longer fighting with it. You're no longer burning your energy, wishing it were different. You're no longer bargaining with reality. You're saying, I see it, I feel it, I know it's here. And the moment you do that, you take the first step toward healing. Think about it like this. If you broke your arm, but refused to admit it was broken, how much worse would it get? You could tape it up yourself, you could hide it under your sleeve, you could pretend nothing was wrong, but every movement would remind you of the truth. You're injured, and because you refuse to admit it, you never go to the doctor, you never get the cast, and the bone heals the wrong way. Now you've not only got a broken arm, you've got a permanent deformity. That's exactly what happens with emotional wounds. When you deny them, when you hide them, when you pretend you're fine, they don't go away. They heal crooked. They shape the rest of your life in ways you never intended. Acceptance is the cast. It's what keeps you from making things worse. It stabilizes you so that true healing can begin. Without it, you carry the wound forever. With it, you start the process of moving forward. But here's the catch. Acceptance requires courage. It means you have to sit with the truth. Even when it's ugly, even when it's painful. You have to admit the marriage ended. You have to admit the person you trusted betrayed you. You have to admit you failed at something you gave everything to. And those are not easy admissions. That's why most people keep running, keep distracting, keep numbing themselves. Because facing it feels unbearable. But let me tell you something powerful. What feels unbearable to face is actually the very thing that will set you free. The moment you stop saying, this shouldn't have happened to me, and you start saying, it did happen, and now I decide what comes next, you take your power back. That shift, just that one shift, is the difference between being stuck in pain and stepping into healing. Because when you accept, you stop waiting. You stop waiting for the apology that may never come. You stop waiting for the person who left to return. You stop waiting for life to rewind and give you a different outcome. You stop waiting for closure from someone else and start creating it for yourself. There's a freedom in that. There's a lightness. Because now you're no longer dragging the weight of should have been. You're dealing with what is. And when you deal with what is, you can actually do something about it. You can rebuild. You can redirect. You can grow. You can heal. I know some of you are thinking, but if I accept it, doesn't that mean I've lost? No. Acceptance doesn't mean you've lost. It means you've stopped fighting a battle you can never win. You cannot win against the past. The past is already written. The fight is over. And every second you keep fighting it, you bleed energy. You bleed focus. You bleed life. Acceptance is how you stop the bleeding. Ask yourself this. How much of your life right now is being drained by something you refuse to accept? How many conversations are you replaying in your head that you can't change? How many why me questions are you circling that have no answers? How much energy are you wasting on a reality that's already here? That's the cost of non-acceptance. That's the tax you pay for living in denial. Now imagine if you took all of that energy, all of that mental bandwidth, and redirected it into something else, into rebuilding yourself, into creating a future, into finding meaning in the pain. That's what acceptance gives you. The ability to redirect. The ability to say, yes, this happened, and now what do I do with it? Some of the strongest people you'll ever meet are not the ones who had easy lives. They're the ones who accepted the hardest truths and used them as fuel. They didn't waste their lives waiting for fairness. They didn't get stuck in denial. They faced it, they owned it, and they built something out of it. That's available to you too. But only if you accept. So here's the bottom line. You will never heal from a wound you refuse to acknowledge. You can't stitch up what you pretend isn't bleeding. You can't release what you won't even admit you're holding. Acceptance is the first and most vital step. It doesn't mean you're okay with what happened. It doesn't mean you'll never feel the sting of it again. It means you're done fighting reality. It means you've chosen to face the truth so you can finally move through it. And that, right there, is the gateway. That's the door you've been looking for. Healing is on the other side of acceptance. And until you walk through that door, you'll stay locked in the same room, replaying the same pain, again and again. But the moment you accept, the moment you stop resisting, you step into freedom. And that freedom is where real healing begins. Pain is not the enemy. We've been conditioned to think it is, that the moment we feel hurt, broken, disappointed, or betrayed, something has gone terribly wrong and our job is to get rid of it as quickly as possible. But the truth is, pain is not what keeps you from healing. It's not the thing destroying your life. The real enemy is avoidance. The real destruction comes from what you do to run away from the pain instead of facing it. Think about how most people deal with hurt. They distract themselves. They bury themselves in work. They jump from one relationship to another. They scroll endlessly, drown themselves in substances, or build walls so high that nobody can get in. And from the outside, it may even look like they're doing fine. They seem busy, productive, maybe even happy. But inside, they're running from something that will eventually catch up. Pain doesn't disappear because you avoid it. It waits. It lingers. It grows louder until you finally turn around and face it. That's the trap. Avoidance gives you temporary relief. It numbs you just enough so you can get through the day. But it's a lie. Because every time you avoid, you reinforce the belief that the pain is bigger than you are. You teach yourself, I can't handle this. I need to hide from it. And the more you do that, the weaker you feel, the smaller you become, and the further you get from healing. Pain is not the problem. Your refusal to face it is. Here's the thing. Pain is a teacher. A It's a messenger. It's telling you something about your life, about your boundaries, about your values, about who you are and what you need. Pain shows you where you've been wounded so you can take care of it. It shows you what matters most to you. It reveals where your strength is hiding. But you can't learn any of those lessons if you keep running away. When you silence the pain with distraction, you also silence the wisdom it carries. Imagine you've got a fire alarm in your house, and it starts going off in the middle of the night. The alarm is loud, annoying, uncomfortable. You don't like the sound of it. Now you have two choices. You can rip the batteries out, silence the noise, and go back to bed. Or you can get up, figure out where the smoke is coming from, and put out the fire. Which choice keeps you safe? Which one saves your life? Pain is that alarm. Avoidance is ripping the batteries out. Facing your pain is putting out the fire. But let's be honest, facing pain is terrifying. It requires sitting in discomfort when every instinct in your body wants to escape. It requires honesty about how deeply you've been hurt, about how lost or broken you feel. That's why avoidance is so tempting. It feels easier. But easier in the moment becomes harder in the long run. The very thing you're avoiding is what will end up defining your life if you never deal with it. You see it all the time. People who never dealt with their heartbreak and carry that bitterness into every relationship. People who never faced their childhood wounds and spend their adult lives sabotaging themselves. People who lost something dear but never grieved, and decades later, they're still haunted. That's what avoidance does. It chains you to the pain. It convinces you that if you just ignore it long enough, it will disappear. But it doesn't disappear. It festers. It grows roots. It embeds itself so deeply that eventually you don't even notice it's guiding every choice you make. So how do you break that cycle? You sit with the pain, you let yourself feel it fully without rushing to get rid of it. You say, yes, this hurts. Yes, this feels unbearable. Yes, I wish it were different. And you breathe through it. You let the tears come. You let the silence hold you. And in that space, you discover something powerful. You didn't die from facing it. You thought it would consume you, but instead, you survived it. That realization is what begins to set you free. The very thing you've been running from is the very thing that strengthens you when you finally stop running. Every great comeback story, every person you admire who's walked through fire and come out stronger, they didn't do it by avoiding their pain. They did it by confronting it. They looked it in the eye, they felt it all, and they walked through it anyway. That's courage. And courage isn't the absence of fear, it's choosing to face the fear anyway. Ask yourself this. What are you avoiding right now? What pain are you numbing with busyness, with noise, with denial? What truth are you terrified to face? Because until you answer that, honestly, you will stay stuck. Healing won't come from hiding. It won't come from pretending you're fine. It won't come from the false safety of avoidance. Healing only comes from facing the pain, processing it, and learning from it. And here's the paradox. When you finally stop avoiding, the pain often turns out to be less scary than you imagined. The anticipation of facing it is often worse than the experience itself. Avoidance makes the monster grow bigger in your head. Facing it shrinks it back down to size. You begin to see the wound for what it is, something that hurt you, yes, but something you can also move beyond. The truth is, pain is not here to destroy you. Pain is here to refine you. It strips away illusions. It tests your resilience. It forces you to confront who you really are. Avoidance robs you of that gift. Avoidance keeps you small, stuck, and fragile. Pain, when faced, makes you stronger, wiser, more compassionate, more alive. So stop running. Stop silencing the alarm. Stop pretending the fire isn't there. Sit with it. Feel it. Let it teach you what it needs to teach you. Because on the other side of that pain is freedom. On the other side of that pain is healing. And the only way out is through. Responsibility is a word that makes many people uncomfortable. It feels heavy. It feels like lame. It feels like being told everything is your fault. But that's not what responsibility really is. Responsibility is not about fault. It's about freedom. It's about taking back control over your life, even in the areas where someone else caused the pain. Because here's the truth. You may not be responsible for what happened to you, but you are absolutely responsible for what you do with it now. And the moment you accept that, you stop being a victim of your past and start becoming the author of your future. Most of us waste years waiting for someone else to fix what they broke. We wait for the apology that never comes. We wait for the person who hurt us to admit what they did. We wait for life to give us back what it took away. But waiting is a trap. It ties your healing to someone else's actions. It puts your freedom in their hands. And let's be honest, most of the time, they're not coming to save you. They may never say the words you're desperate to hear. They may never feel the guilt you think they should. And if your healing depends on them, you'll be waiting forever. Responsibility says, I'm not going to wait anymore. It says, yes, you hurt me. Yes, life was unfair, but I refuse to hand over my future to you. Responsibility is reclaiming your power. It's choosing to take ownership of your healing, even when you didn't cause the wound. And that's not weakness. It's strength. Because the moment you take responsibility, you are no longer powerless. You're no longer at the mercy of circumstances. You're no longer chained to someone else's choices. You're free to decide how your story continues. Think about it this way. If you're driving down the road and someone crashes into your car, the accident may not have been your fault, but fixing the car, calling the tow truck, arranging transportation, that's still on you. You don't just sit in the wreckage, waiting for the other driver to come back and make it right. You handle it, because it's your life. Emotional wounds are no different. Maybe the crash wasn't your fault, but healing and moving forward is your responsibility. A lot of people confuse responsibility with blame. And that's why they resist it. They think taking responsibility means letting the other person off the hook. But that's not true. Responsibility doesn't erase what they did. It just frees you from being stuck in it. Blame looks backward. Responsibility looks forward. Blame says, this happened because of you. Responsibility says, this is where I am. Now what do I do next? One keeps you trapped in the past. The other gives you the power to build a future. This is why forgiveness is such a misunderstood concept. Forgiveness isn't about excusing someone's behavior. It's not about saying what you did was okay. Forgiveness is about releasing yourself from the grip of that pain. It's about saying, I refuse to let this chain me any longer. And forgiveness becomes possible only when you accept responsibility for your own healing. You stop waiting for closure from the outside and create it for yourself from the inside. Now, responsibility isn't easy. It forces you to confront parts of yourself you'd rather ignore. Because sometimes, taking responsibility means admitting where you stayed too long, admitting where you didn't set boundaries, admitting where you avoided the red flags. And those admissions sting. But here's the key. Responsibility is not about self-punishment. It's about self-empowerment. It's about saying, I see where I went wrong, and I'm going to do better from now on. That's how you grow. That's how you take the lessons from the pain instead of just the scars. When you embrace responsibility, you begin to realize that healing is not an event, it's a practice. It's the daily choice to own your story instead of being owned by it. It's the discipline of showing up for yourself, even on the days when you feel broken. It's setting boundaries to protect your peace. It's choosing to work on your mindset, your habits, your environment. Every small choice you make is an act of responsibility, and over time, those choices rebuild your life. Think of the alternative. When you avoid responsibility, you stay stuck in victim mode. You give all your energy to anger, to resentment, to wishing life had gone differently. And while those emotions are valid, they don't build anything. They don't move you forward. They keep you frozen in the wreckage of what happened. Responsibility, on the other hand, gives you movement. It gives you direction. It gives you momentum. And momentum is what creates change. Ask yourself, what would my life look like if I stopped waiting for someone else to fix it? What would it look like if I truly owned my healing? If I stopped replaying what I couldn't control and focused only on what I can? That's where your power is. That's where freedom lives. I want you to understand something. Responsibility doesn't shrink you. It expands you. It doesn't weigh you down. It lifts you up. It transforms you from being reactive to being proactive, from being powerless to being powerful, from being stuck in the past to being present in the now. Because when you take responsibility, you stop asking why me and you start asking what now. And that shift changes everything. The people who rise from their pain, the people who inspire others, the people who turn tragedy into triumph, they all share one thing in common. They took responsibility. They refused to wait for life to be fair. They refused to let someone else's actions dictate the rest of their story. They decided, this happened, and now I take charge of what comes next. That's the kind of strength you already have within you. It doesn't mean you don't acknowledge the pain. It doesn't mean you ignore the injustice. It means you decide not to let it define you. And in that decision lies your freedom. So stop waiting. Stop giving your power away. Stop holding your healing hostage to someone else's choices. Take responsibility, not because it's easy, but because it's the only way forward. Responsibility is not a burden. It's a key. And once you turn it, you unlock the door to freedom. So many people go through something painful and then begin to live as if that pain is who they are. They carry the wound like a badge, introducing themselves not by name, but by their scars. They say, I'm the one who was betrayed. I'm the one who failed. I'm the one who lost everything. And slowly, without even realizing it, the wound becomes their identity. But you are not what happened to you. You are not your trauma, your heartbreak, your mistakes, or your losses. Those things are chapters in your story, but they are not the title of the book. It's easy to fall into the trap of defining yourself by your wound, because pain feels all-consuming when you're in it. It dominates your thoughts, your emotions, and your choices. You wake up thinking about it. You go to sleep replaying it. It seeps into your conversations and your relationships. And before long, the wound isn't just an event. It feels like the essence of who you are. But here's the truth. A wound is an experience, not an identity. It may shape you, but it does not define you, unless you let it. Think of a scar on your body. Maybe you have one from surgery, from an accident, from some kind of injury. That scar tells a story of what happened. But when you walk into a room, you don't introduce yourself as, hi, I'm the person with the scar. You know that the scar is part of you, but it isn't all of you. Emotional wounds work the same way. They leave a mark, yes, but that mark is not your name. It's not your destiny. It's just a reminder of something you lived through. When you allow your wound to define you, you stop yourself from healing fully. Because every decision you make, every opportunity you consider, every relationship you enter, you filter it all through the lens of the pain. You say, I can't do that, I'm broken, or I can't trust because I was betrayed, or I can't try again because I failed once. The wound becomes a cage and you lock yourself inside of it. But the bars of that cage aren't real. They're made of stories you keep repeating about who you think you are. You are not broken. You may feel broken. You may have been hurt, but at your core, you are still whole. The fact that you are breathing right now is proof that life has not left you behind. The fact that you've survived what you've survived means there is more strength in you than you've realized. And if you're strong enough to carry the pain this long, you're strong enough to rise above it. The question is, who do you want to be beyond the wound? Because identity is a choice. You can choose to stay defined by what hurt you, or you can choose to rewrite the narrative. You can say, yes, I went through this, but I am also more than this. You can shift from I am a victim to I am a survivor. You can shift from I am broken to I am becoming stronger. That shift doesn't erase the wound. It reframes it. It gives the pain a new meaning, one that empowers you instead of diminishes you. So many people resist this because they fear that if they stop identifying with the wound, they'll lose a part of themselves. They think, if I stop being the one who was wronged, who am I? If I stop being the one who suffered, what story do I tell? And that's exactly the point. You get to tell a new story. You get to redefine yourself on your own terms. The wound may always be part of your past, but it does not have to be your permanent label. Imagine two people who go through the exact same tragedy. One lets it define them for the rest of their life, carrying it as proof of why they can never succeed, never trust, never be happy. The other acknowledges the same pain but chooses to build something new from it. They let it sharpen their purpose, deepen their compassion, strengthen their resolve. Same wound, completely different identity. The difference isn't the event. The difference is the choice. And here's the reality. The people who hurt you, the circumstances that broke you, they do not deserve the right to name you. They don't get to stamp your identity. If you let the wound define you, you're letting them win twice. Once when they hurt you, and again, every day. You keep living under that label. Taking back your identity is an act of power. It's saying, you may have wounded me, but you do not own me. I get to decide who I am. Your identity is not your pain. Your identity is the way you rise from it. It's the lessons you choose to carry, the growth you choose to embrace, the meaning you choose to give to your experience. Pain may be a chapter in your book, but it can also be the plot twist that turns you into the hero of your own story. Heroes aren't defined by what happened to them. They're defined by what they became because of it. Ask yourself, how have I been labeling myself because of my wound? What words have I been carrying that don't belong to me anymore? And then ask, what new words do I want to claim? Maybe it's strong. Maybe it's resilient. Maybe it's wise. Maybe it's courageous. That choice is yours. No one else gets to write it for you. The beautiful thing is, when you stop identifying as your wound, you give yourself room to dream again. You start to imagine a future beyond the pain. You open yourself to new possibilities, new relationships, new experiences. You no longer live in the shadow of what happened. You step into the light of what's possible. That doesn't mean you forget. It doesn't mean the scar vanishes. It means you finally understand the scar is not the whole story. So remember this, you are not your wound. You are not your trauma. You are not your loss. You are not your failure. Those are things that happen to you. They are not who you are. Who you are is deeper, greater, stronger than anything that ever tried to break you. Who you are is someone who can stand in the ashes and still choose to rise. Don't let the wound become your identity. Let it become your wisdom. Let it become your strength. Let it become the evidence of what you've overcome. Because at the end of the day, your pain is part of your past, but it is not the definition of your future. Healing is not something that magically happens overnight. It's not a switch you flip or a single event that instantly erases the pain. Healing is a process, and more importantly, it's a choice you make every single day, often in small, ordinary moments that nobody else sees. It's not glamorous. It's not instant. It's the daily discipline of choosing yourself, of choosing growth, of choosing not to let the wound control you anymore. A lot of people wait for healing as if it's going to come find them. They wait for time to do all the work. They say things like time heals all wounds. But that's not true. Time doesn't heal. What you do with the time is what heals. You can let years pass, but if you never deal with the pain, you'll carry it just as fresh as the day it happened. Healing requires participation. Healing requires intention. Healing requires that you wake up and say, today, I will take one step forward, no matter how small. Some days that choice looks like speaking kindly to yourself instead of criticizing. Other days it looks like setting boundaries with people who drain you. Sometimes it's choosing to go to therapy, to journal, to talk to someone you trust instead of bottling it all up. Sometimes it's choosing to forgive, not because the other person deserves it, but because you deserve peace. And sometimes it's simply choosing to get out of bed, to eat something nourishing, to breathe deeply, to keep going when giving up feels easier. All of those little choices add up. That's what creates healing. What makes healing difficult is that it doesn't always feel good in the moment. Choosing to sit with your emotions instead of running from them feels uncomfortable. Choosing to confront your patterns and take responsibility for your life feels confronting. Choosing to let go of people or habits that keep you stuck feels painful at first. But that discomfort is part of the process. Healing is less about feeling better instantly and more about building the foundation for long-term freedom. Think of it like working out. The first time you pick up a weight, your muscles burn. You might even feel sore the next day. But if you keep showing up, if you keep lifting, you grow stronger. Healing works the same way. It requires repetition. It requires daily effort. Some days you'll feel progress. Other days you won't. But every time you choose to do the work, you are building resilience. You are training your mind and your heart to move forward. The danger is in thinking healing is a one-time decision. People say, I've decided to move on, but then weeks later, they're back in the same cycle of anger, grief, or regret. That doesn't mean they failed. It just means healing is ongoing. It's not linear. You'll have days when the wound feels raw again, days when you feel like you're back at square one. That's normal. What matters is what you do on those days. Do you give up? Or do you remind yourself, this is part of the process. I've chosen healing before, and I'll choose it again today. Healing also means being willing to let go of old stories. Every time you replay the same painful narrative in your mind, you keep yourself tethered to the wound. Choosing healing means choosing to rewrite that story. Instead of saying, I am broken because of this, you say, I am stronger because of this. Instead of saying, I'll never be the same, you say, I get to create a new version of me. That reframing doesn't happen once. It happens daily, every time your mind tries to pull you back into the old identity. And here's something most people overlook. Healing is not just about removing pain. It's about building joy. It's about creating habits and experiences that remind you life is worth living. Choosing healing daily might mean giving yourself permission to laugh again. It might mean going outside, feeling the sun, letting yourself enjoy a small moment without guilt. It might mean surrounding yourself with people who uplift you instead of drain you. Healing isn't just about closing the wound, it's about opening yourself to life again. One of the most powerful choices you can make daily is to practice gratitude, even in the smallest ways. Gratitude doesn't erase pain, but it shifts your focus. It reminds you that even though something broke you, not everything is broken. Even though something was taken, not everything is gone. Gratitude teaches your brain to see possibility instead of just loss. And when you train your brain that way every day, you create space for hope to grow again. But let's be real, choosing healing daily takes discipline. It's easier to stay bitter. It's easier to replay the past. It's easier to numb yourself and say, what's the point? That's why healing is not for the faint of heart. It's for the brave. It's for the ones who are willing to do the work, even when nobody applauds them for it. It's for the ones who are willing to take one step forward, fall 2 steps back, and still get up again. That consistency, that perseverance, that's what transforms wounds into wisdom. And here's the payoff. One day you wake up and realize the pain no longer controls you. The memory is still there, but it doesn't sting the same way. The scar is there, but it doesn't define you. You laugh without forcing it. You dream without doubting yourself. You move forward without constantly looking back. That's when you know the daily choices added up. That's when you know you've built your freedom one day at a time. So don't wait for healing to just happen to you. Don't wait for time to magically fix what's broken. Decide. Decide today. Decide tomorrow. Decide every day after that. Choose to face your pain. Choose to care for yourself. Choose to let go of what no longer serves you. Choose to build a life that excites you. Healing is not a destination you stumble upon. It's a path you walk, step by step with intention. The power is in your hands. You may not control the wound, but you control the healing. You control the choices you make today. And those choices are shaping your tomorrow. So ask yourself, will I choose to stay stuck, or will I choose to heal? The answer to that question, asked and answered every single day, is what determines the rest of your story. At some point, you have to decide that your life matters more than your pain. You have to decide that you are no longer going to let the wound dictate who you are, how you love, how you dream, and how you live. Because the truth is this: what happened to you is part of your story, but it is not the whole story. It does not get to be the final chapter unless you let it. Acceptance is the gateway. Facing your pain instead of avoiding it is the path. Taking responsibility is the key that unlocks your freedom. Refusing to let your identity be reduced to your wound is how you reclaim your power. And choosing to heal daily, that is how you write the rest of your life with strength, courage, and purpose. You will never heal until you accept this truth. The power is not in the past. It is in your hand right now. Not tomorrow. Not someday. Right now. The decision you make in this very moment determines whether you stay stuck or whether you rise. So the question is no longer, why did this happen to me? The real question is, what will I do with it now? And my challenge to you is this: do not waste another day chained to what already happened. Do not hand over one more ounce of your future to the people or the circumstances that broke you. Stand up, claim your power. Choose healing, not once, but over and over again, until the choice itself becomes your strength. Because you are not your wound. You are not your pain. You are not your past. You are the warrior who walked through it. You are the survivor who stood back up. You are the author who gets to decide how the story ends. And if you choose to heal, then your story isn't one of defeat, it's one of victory. Now the choice is yours.